Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hi everyone. This is the video part 4 for 5.3 on the subject filing method. In this video, we are going to cover 4 subject filing procedures which involve 7 steps. And also, we are going to learn on the advantages and the disadvantages of subject filing method. So here, this is a subject filing procedures which begin with the first step of the inspecting. Inspecting is actually the process at which we will check for each of the record whether there is a release mark or not. If the record does not have a release mark, then we need to send it back to the user. What means by release mark? Release mark means that the records is already read and replied. Means that is ready for filing. As we refer to figures 11-6, this is the one of the correspondent at which you can see here next to the recipient names there is a release mark. When you see this release mark, means that the letter or the correspondent is ready for filing. The second step is whereby we need to do the indexing. What means by indexing? Means that we will select for the filing segment for that particular records. So here the filing segment is referring to the subject or the main topic of the correspondent. Some of the record is already been assigned with the subject code before it been sent for the record management department. However, there will be a certain circumstances at which the subject has not been identified. Therefore, we need to read the record in order to determine the subject. The subject must match with the predetermined subject in our subject file list or our subject file index. So here, the filing segment for this letter or correspondent is annual meeting. So this subject or the topic will be written on the right corner here to indicate this is the headings or the subject under which this record will be filed. Next is coding. Coding is at which we need to code the main subject and the subdivision in the text. We need to write the subject in the upper right corner like we mentioned just now after we have select for the filing segment. Then we need to write the subject in the upper right corners of the letter, and we need to underline the cross-reference subjects with a wavy line, and we need to place an X in the next margin. You must remember, in doing the indexing and coding for subject filing method, you must make sure the filing segment should include the subject, all the subject divisions, and the corresponding name. So in the given example here, for example, the subject is about advertising, and the corresponding name will be Carmen Rios Advertising Agency. Another example is this letter, the subject is human resources, and the subdivisions will be employees grievance. So it will depend on the given records or given correspondent. For the first one, this example is at which they give you the name of the topic or the subject plus with the name of the correspondent, which is the name of the company. The second example is at which they give you the main topic or the main subject plus with its subtopic or subdivision. So, in the given example, as you can see here, like I mentioned just now, when you choose for the filing segment, which is the title or the topic of the correspondent, and you need to write on the right corner here, annual meeting is the subject, plus with the name of the company, which is Rising Sun Travel Service. That's why we will index from the left to the right. So annual meeting plus with a Rising Sun Travel Service. So annual will be the key unit. Meeting is unit number 2. Rising unit number 3. Sun unit number 4. Travel unit number 5. Service unit number 6. You must remember again, for indexing and coding, you must combine the subject and also the corresponding name, which is the company's name. And as you can see here, there is the wavy line here, which is travel insurance, and that will X on the right margin. It means that this correspondent has a cross reference. This record or correspondent has been associated with this subtopic, or we call it as a subdivisions, which is on the travel insurance. That's why it been written down on the wavy line plus with the X on the right margin. So since we have the cross reference of that particular subject, we need to have to complete the cross reference form. So what is the cross referencing? As we learned previously on chapter 4.2 about cross references, at which there will be a several reason why we need to have the cross referencing. One of it because there is the alternative subject for that particular correspondent. Like I mentioned just now, okay, the main subject for this letter is about annual meetings. Plus with that, there is an additional or alternative subject for this letter, which is on the travel insurance. That's why this correspondent needs to have the cross-referencing. It can be filed under alternative subject titles. That's why afterwards you need to have complete this cross-reference sheet, at which you need to write the topic, or we call of the associated subject heading, which is on the travel insurance, plus with the name of correspondent, which is Rising Sun Travel Service. Okay, if I can show you here, for the first, the main subject that we decide, or the filing segment that we decide at the first, is actually annual meeting, and it should be plus with the name of correspondent, which is the name of the company. That's why we write annual meeting, and then we do the coding for Rising Sun Travel Service. Plus with that, for this correspondent, we have the cross reference, at which travel insurance been identified as the subdivisions, or we call alternate subject for this record. Instead of annual meeting, we also can uh, keep this record under this subject, which is on the travel insurance. That's why we need to put travel insurance plus with the Rising Sun Travel Service. Like I mentioned just now, we need to have the subject plus with the name of correspondent. So in these situations, the name of correspondent is the company's name. So once we need to fill up the cross-reference sheet, we need to put here the alternative subject for these records, which is, like I mentioned just now, travel insurance, followed by the name of the correspondent, which is a Rising Sun Travel Services. Service. And not only that, you need also include the dates of the record. And also here, you need to mention that it's regarding on the annual meeting held in Japan. Why? Because it's about the annual meeting and it been mentioned that it happened in Japan. Here, they mentions about the business trip to the Japan. And we need to put here C annual meeting Rising Sun Travel Service, which is this is the original or the main or the first filing segment that we decide before we having the cross reference. If you still remember, this we will consider it as the original and this is the cross reference. So after we do the cross-referencing, then we will do for a sorting. What is actually sorting? Sorting is actually the process whereby you will arrange by using the main titles, then followed by the subdivisions of that particular correspondent. And remember, when you do a sorting, you not only sort by the main titles and also subdivision, but also you need to do a sorting by the correspondent name, which is whether it is the company's name or personal name. The example just now, okay, it will be followed by correspondent name of Rising Sun Travel Service. Why? Because this is the correspondent name. Okay, and after you do a sorting with the arranging of the records based on the main title, subdivision, and also the correspondent name, then you will do for a filing. Filing is at which you will put that record under the subject folder. Okay, and lastly, definitely in the process of using, you will retrieve the records. In order to retrieve, you will use a master's or relative index to locate the records. That's why we need to have the subject index, or we call it just now as subject file list. Next video, you are going to learn on the subject code and also the advantages and the disadvantages of subject filing method. So stay tuned with me.